There was the 2% pay raise, which I think is going to benefit teachers across the board. But we're in the bottom 10 states for teacher pay right now. And even with that bump, we're only going to go up a few spaces. So we're still going to be close to the bottom. The other thing we know that this budget doesn't do, I think you can look at this budget and there's a lot that it tells you by what it doesn't do, by what's not said. We still have 7,000 fewer TAs than we did before the recession started. And that makes a difference in those early years. We still are nowhere near where we need to be in terms of textbook and supplies. While the House budget makes an additional bump over what the governor's budget did, neither of those proposals meet the needs as stated currently by the Department of Public Instruction. We also know that we have one of the worst school nurse to child ratio in our schools, and there's no efforts to address that. There are some small efforts to address some of the early childhood education issues, but we still have many waiting lists in our early childhood programs, which means, these are effects we may not see for a few years. The kids aren't going to be as ready to succeed in school as they would otherwise be if we made those needed investments.
In an ideal world, what should the House have done?
I think in an ideal world, one of the things we need to address is the fact that we need to make sure we have new revenue. Thanks to the 2013 tax plan, we're undercutting our ability to make investments as our economy grows in the critical building blocks of success for our future. So one of the things they could have done in their budget was to eliminate another kind of thing that slipped in under the radar, I think, in the tax plan in 2013 was something called a corporate rate reduction trigger. So what happened is this year, January 1, we saw an additional reduction of the corporate income tax rate. Because the revenue projections were met for this year, which were set arbitrarily low in the legislation, we're going to automatically see another cut in the corporate tax rate in 2016 and 2017. All told, once that's fully implemented, that's another $500 million of revenue loss every year. So that should have been stopped. And I think we need to consider also, even though there's this revenue surplus, that's very likely one-time funding. So we're not necessarily going to see that again. Yet it triggered this corporate rate reduction, which is a permanent reduction on our ability to raise revenue in the future in a sustainable way. So that definitely should have been addressed. We would have loved to see, the earned income tax credit come back. That's also something that helps working families and is money that goes right back into local economies. Instead, what we saw was sort of targeted industry incentives that don't really do a whole lot to help our economy and more corporate giveaways.